Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Now I've been having the flu, so I'm really happy to be here. And it's about time I got down to this review I've been dying to get to. There were always a few potential contenders for the title of biggest and baddest. Besides T-Rex, there was Giganotosaurus, Spinosaurus, and Carcharodontosaurus. For me, these four are my must-haves for mega predators. But there's been a dearth of decent models of Carcharodontosaurus. This year, however, seems to be the year of Carcharodontosaurus, with the GR Toys Blue that just came out, the GR Toys Flame, and GR Toys 1 to 20th resin model, both of them coming soon. And here's the contribution from what's fast becoming my favorite dinosaur company, PNSO. This is Gamba, the Carcharodontosaurus, and straight away, it's beautiful. The color matches very closely to the release images, except for one area I'll mention later. I've shared a few facts about Carcharodontosaurus in my GR Toys Blue review, so I won't belabor the point. But to say, we have very little to go on in terms of fossil material, so restorations have always filled in with other relatives. And it follows that size estimates are really just that. This model is 32.5 centimeters measured along the curve. That's 12.8 inches. Credible sources have estimated between 12 to 13 meters, that's 39 to 42.5 feet, and PNSO itself states over 11 meters, that's 36 feet. So, covering a range from 11 to 13 meters, that puts this model down between 1 to 34 to 1 to 40 of scale. And if you want it to be 1 to 30 of scale, then your life size estimate is 11.4 meters, that's 37 feet. Now let's go to the head. As far as many respectable restorations go, this model is close to what's been agreed on. And as for the detail, it's absolutely stunning. Now PNSO just keeps delivering, and here you can see how minute the facial scalation is. There isn't the rugosity you see in other theropods. And here, the keratinized crests are handled very delicately. And just look at these tiny scales, giving the edge a serrated look. The jaw is articulated and there are no lips. I like how the black of the lower margin here frames the exposed teeth. And of course, Carcharodontosaurus means sharp-toothed lizard, so it's nice that the teeth are highlighted in some way. Each is individually sculpted and painted with a kind of a yellowing, which is quite natural, and I like that. Although on the right side, the paint is a little sloppy and it will need touching up. But as for the rest of the paint application, from the reddish brown fading into the greenish brown here, so smoothly complementing the delicacy of the scales, then the gold that highlights the edge of the crests. I like these almost flame-like stripes you see cutting across the face of the dinosaur. Unfortunately, as you can see compared to the product images, they lose complexity of application and they don't go up as high on the face. The dark margins on the jaw here stop quite abruptly compared to the subtle fading you see in the prototype. And there's a color discontinuity from the throat to the jaw. From the front here, you can see the narrowness of the skull and no obstruction to stereoscopic vision in this Carcharodontosaurus. The eyes are very precisely painted in a deep red and dotted with a very black pupil. And there's just a kind of intensity and intent that I find really cool about it. Moving down, I'm delighted to say that the colour moves away from the brown that PNSO seems to favour with a lot of their figures. Earth tones make sense for large predators, but I think we do want more variation from PNSO. So PNSO, if you're listening, please give us more colour variation. Now thankfully, we see that here, in the way the reddish tint fades into a green down here, almost a yellowing down here, and then the pink of the more vulnerable areas. The stripe motif continues on with no abrupt edges, and I love the image of a tiger that evokes for me. You can see just in the flank area here how the mix of greens, yellows and pinks are faded into each other so pleasingly. And just like the Allosaurus, the tip of the tail is also highlighted in a reddish tint. If we look at it from the top, we can see just how far off from the typical brown base we're so used to from previous PNSO offerings. Looking more closely at the detail, you'll see the texture of the scales in the body here. They definitely are moving away from the T-Rex aesthetic and more towards what we saw in the Allosaurus, which I have right here. I especially love how this finer detail affords greater realism, especially when you see how they present in the areas where the skin creases take place. And also here down in the tail where the veins are. And on the underside, the scalation is done so finely as to be hard to see compared to previous offerings. I do wish they'd added some kind of a fade or dry brushing to bring out more texture here. The arm proportions look sufficiently small to me. And as for the thighs, they're very nicely and heavily muscled. And in the smaller regions of the legs and the arms, you'll see how masterfully PNSO has sculpted the appropriate fineness. It's hardly necessary for me to point out how the color application fades very smoothly and seamlessly. And in the legs, I like the way PNSO often darkens it almost to a black as we travel inferiorly. This dinosaur stands quite well without the stand, although I do have to say that this, as well as my Allosaurus, do balance a little more precariously compared to the other theropods I have, so the stand is definitely recommended. And this dinosaur is striding forward with a very definite purpose other than just a moonlight stroll. So it's time for some comparisons. First of all, the mandatory T-Rex. As you can see, there's really no contest when it comes to sheer bulk and volume. The T-Rex still reigns. I think PNSO has done a great job in putting the Carcharodontosaurus in its place. the PNSO Allosaurus, then we have the Eofauna Giganotosaurus. Now I'm sure you all want to know how it compares to the GR Toys Carcharodontosaurus. I'll just make a blanket statement that as far as anatomy goes, they both use reasonable reconstructions, the paint application and sculpting is top-notch in both, so which you get might boil down to a few things. First, we have the color scheme. The blue variant of the GR Toys is too fantastical for some of you. So in that case, the PNSO will be more to your taste. It looks more natural and more realistic. The happy thing is, contrary to some complaints about PNSO, this is one model that isn't based in browns again, but with a nice mix of green. So that should be a bonus point. 2. We have lips. I know that's sacrosanct to some of you. The GR Toys version has them, the PNSO doesn't. However, at least in my GR Toys, it can't fully close its mouth, so having lips without being able to show that is a bummer. The PNSO one has no lips, but the mouth closes perfectly. 3. We have individual sculpting aesthetics. Now each has its own strengths. PNSO's is very fine, but at a larger scale, the GR Toys is comparable. In addition, because of the way the paint is applied, they are much easier to see and appreciate on the GR Toys. For example, look at the flank here, then the underside, and because of the larger size, look at the arms. And speaking of size, that's my fourth point. The GR Toys is 36 centimeters, that's 14.2 inches. The PNSO is 32.5 centimeters, or about 13 inches. Now the tail is longer in the GR Toys, but it's not just the length per se, it's the entire volume and what that means for scale. Again, it depends on which estimate you want to go by. So if we take a range of 11 to 13 meters, that's 36 to 42.7 feet. And that puts the PNSO at a range of 1 to 33 to 1 to 40. And the GR Toys is 1 to 30 to 1 to 36. If you want both to be 1 to 35th scale, then the GR Toys represents a 12.6 meter or 41.5 foot individual, and the PNSO represents an 11.4 meter or 37 foot dinosaur. So there you have it. Hopefully, this video has given you not just a tour of the PNSO Carcharodontosaurus, but also helped you in making what for many of you will be a very difficult and vexing decision. Have a great week ahead, guys, and I'll see you soon with another review.